Hello and welcome along to this video where we are doing a flight in FSX. As it happens, we are in a very good but freeware Embraer today with a sound pack that I got also for free. That I've been looking for a good Embraer sound pack for a while, and I was thinking, okay, I'm going to have to get a payware one. But I managed to find this one, and it's actually not that bad, so I thought I'd demo it, and we can do a short flight. So we are doing Birmingham to Amsterdam today. We are in the KLM Royal Dutch Airlines Embraer E190. Heading across to Amsterdam. It's a very short flight. It's only about 240 nautical miles. We're going to head up to flight level 250 and then we'll head straight back down and get down in Amsterdam. The flight plan's all loaded in. The aircraft is here, although there's no sound currently until we fire up the engines. On Project Fly, we are here, so we are KLM 1424, that is our official call sign. So you can see 238 nautical miles and all that. Right. We're going to just run this. Now I don't actually know if I have the Embraer E190 added to my library, so if not then we will do that, because I can't remember whether I've ever flown this particular one before. I've flown the 195, I think. There you go, so it's E190 is not recognized. Okay, yeah, right.
Autopilot on.
So we're going to go to aircraft options. And I'm going to go to the button here which should say
Context menu.
Copy values from, and I want not that one. There is an Embraer E190 apparently there, but that's not E195. Now that's the slightly bigger version.
There are dialog values have been copied. Press OK in the aircraft option dialog box to save them permanently for this aircraft. Press cancel to abort. OK button.
Okay, good.
Aircraft options dialog. Service ceiling.
Right, let's have a
Speeds.
look.
The flat combo box 1.
So we've now got
combo edit selected new aircraft.
It's called
combo
a new
box
aircraft.
Edit selected new aircraft. Combo box 1 collapsed. Edit selected new aircraft.
So I'm just going to come in here.
Activate edit new dub space aircraft
just get rid of that and call it
EMBRAER space
E19095. 90. My apologies.
Combo box 1 collapsed.
That's
collapse pose auto landing. Combo box OK. Autopilot main panel dialog heading for.
Oh, I didn't mean
edit selected 0. Files up gen aircraft options A. Aircraft.
Again.
Combo box 1 collapsed. OK. Autopilot.
Oh, how do I?
Files gen aircraft options. Collapse pose combo edit 1.
Oh, maybe.
No next. No previous. Combo box 1 collapsed. Edit. No objects inside. No net. No previous. Embraer E190. Embraer E190. Embraer E1. No object. No next. No previous.
I'm trying to get it so it's not gonna.
No combo box edit. Combo box 1 collapsed. Flaps pose auto landing. Default climb. Flap combo box 1 collapsed. Edit 1. Embraer E190. No net. No previous. No previous.
Yeah,
no
I don't like this aircraft option dialog in the way it's laid out. It's not.
Activate combo box collapsed. Edit select 0.
There we go. 0.
No next.
Fine. Then what do I do?
No net. No pre combo box 0 collapsed. Flaps pose auto landing.
There we go.
Default climb race. FT/min grouping.
So let me see if it's copied this correctly.
This helicopter E190. E190 edit 230.
Seems to have.
Takeoff. KNT.
Set the takeoff to
E190 edit 230. Activate speed.
Which is obviously from the other one, which we don't need. We can set that to 180.
Takeoff. Cancel but OK. Cruising. Approach. Minimum. Cruising. Service ceiling. Copy values from below 15,000 FT. Below 15,000 FT edit 2200. Above autopilot bank steering force. Autopilot tuning parameters all required. Edit 5.0. Autopilot tuning bank steering force. Pitch steering force. Autopilot bank pitch steering force edit 5.0. Flare height. Edit 15. Activate
flare height I'm just going to change. Let's put that about
7.
8. That should do us.
Speed 0 height. Speed throttle steering force. Throttle steering force edit 5.0. Holding leg. NM. Holding leg. Maximum angle pitch. Optional group. Hold. Throttle speed 0 height. Speed flare height. Pitch steering force. Pitch flip. Holding leg. Maximum angle pitch. Up max bank. Dead.
Apologies for this, but I just want to get this right.
No next.
Right, that'll all do. Good. Yeah, I've never flown this aircraft before, but you can see
Cruising. Minimum. Approach. Cancel button. OK press.
It's a lot easier
Selected. AP checkbox checked.
when you can just go into the aircraft library. I haven't got to mess about, go into all the documents, folders and stuff, and edit it manually. Right, we're going to load the flight plan that I created, which is obviously, where will it be? It's under, oh, it might be under Birmingham, yeah, there we go, Birmingham to EHAM or EHAM.
Autopilot main panel dialog.
Good. So what else do we need to do? I don't think there's anything else really. We can pretty much go into the sim and do that and begin the engine startup sequence. And they will begin to fire up. Very nice sounds as well. They're very pretty realistic. They're not bad. That was engine 1. Now engine 2 is coming online. There it goes. And that's going to go into our idle power in a second. Just perfect. I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm just going to go in here and turn the... turn that up just a tad. And we're just going to apply a little bit of power here. Not that much. So just so the project fly thinks we're taxiing. And then we're going to go here and just spawn to the runway so we can get out of here nice and fast. We're going to be going off runway 33 today. That's what SimBrief gave me. That's going to load us on the runway, which
Simulation
is done.
unpaused. Time acceleration is 1.
I'm going to set flaps as well. FSX Pilot may adjust that, but whatever. Let's check the AP still on, which is
autopilot on.
And we can just go run flight plan.
Switching to true heading display for
And off we
departure.
go.
Sir. Landing, strobe, and NAV lights on. Climb rate set to 2,200 feet per minute. Altitude set to 3,600 feet. Speed set to 200 knots. NAV on.
So we're taking off.
V1.
I like the engine sounds. They're relatively quiet, nothing
Rotate.
big, but you know, it
NAV
doesn't make a
on.
massive buzzsaw noise, but they're quite nice anyway.
Heading set
There
to a
goes
true heading of
flaps and that gear coming up.
326 degrees. Speed
Force
set
light
to
to go out.
250
We're gonna
knots.
do that. Oh, it does it automatically. I
Altitude
forget
set
that
to 25,000 feet.
on my my flight plan.
Next waypoint on gap selected.
It's just going to my next
Speed
waypoint.
set to 250 knots.
See what our airspeed is. Yeah. Speed's a bit all over the place, but it'll do its thing. About 240 knots, and we're going to Ungab, apparently, which is our first waypoint. Of course, we're using the new repeat airspeed feature, or at least we will be on approach. It's always fun. And we should be climbing up to flight level 250 straight away. Of course, now when I tab out the window with FSX, the sound mutes, but you know, whatever. It is what it is. This aircraft I only have in FSX. I need to start moving stuff over to P3D, but the reason I haven't is usually because, for example, if it's a plane like this one is, or I can't remember where I got this one, but some of them, if they're off the Riku website, or you know, even some other websites, if you have an installer, it doesn't like me having it installed in 2 sims, so I have to uninstall it out of FSX, work out what sounds I had, because most of my planes are running third-party sounds, then go and install it into P3D and change over the sounds. So for planes I fly a lot, I've done that, so you know, like the Airbus, like when I did the P3D video. But for planes I don't fly as much, like this one, which I've only ever flown a few times, let's have an outside view, then I don't tend to do it as much. Let's try flyby. A bit weak. But anyway, as you can hear, we are maintaining 250 knots relatively well. So let's have a look on here, showing 233 nautical miles an hour. You can see we're coming up to 6,000 feet, 282 on the ground speed, but that is true. And of course we're en route. Let's have a look. Yeah, pretty much 250 there. So we can pretty much just sit back and relax now, and it should do all the work. We just need to monitor the speed, and we're not going to be at flight level 250 for long at all. Oh, in fact, I'll be surprised if we even make it there, but we'll see. That's what SimBrief gave me.
Next waypoint red FA selected.
File submenu Alt plus F. Autopilot main panel dialog heading course HDG 120 DES 0250 KNTV/S2293FT/MALT 08385 FTF Retro 14796. Microsoft.
Yeah, I think that's just skipped out my airway actually. I have a feeling it may have done. I'm sure we weren't supposed to go direct to that waypoint. I'm sure we were supposed to jump on an airway and go somewhere, but that's strange. Maybe I didn't type it in, or I did something wrong. I'll have to have a look at that. But anyway, we're going direct to the waypoint now. It's relatively close to Amsterdam.
Auto track flight en route flight ends cruise drop 10 altitude 10 F approved speed safe 340.
Speed set to 341 knots.
We're now increasing speed up to a lot higher because we can, above 10,000 of course.
S. Track altitude 95 degrees distance.
So you can see we're now 206 nautical miles. We're making good progress. Coming through just above flight level 160, so we should be able to reach
438 ATS
and 438 knots. I'm probably not even going to mess about with our ground speed. It's good enough as it is. I don't really need to be changing over to Mach. Of course, you usually would, but we're doing just fine. We've got a good enough ground speed. It'll get us there pretty fast.
S S S.
Right, okay, so we're doing alright.
Ground speed, 22,244
As you
feet.
can see, coming through 22,000 feet, 174 nautical miles, so we'll just reach cruise 477 knots, so we're absolutely fine on the ground speed.
S S S S.
Right, so we're still inbound Redford. Just reaching 25,000, so we're 70 nautical miles out from Redford. 496 knots, as you can see, pretty much at 25,000. And 150 nautical miles out, pretty much.
S S S S. Autopilot main panel dialog heading course HDG 097 DEGIA 0341 KNTV/S0018 FT/MO 24,984 FTFP red for 5498.
Right, so we're still inbound Redford, and now 136. We'll start descending soon.
S. A. 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 S. 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 Z. Z.
The autopilot on the aircraft, apparently. Right, we need to start descending, so let's get a descent going. Set altitude, let's go down to 5,000.
Altitude set to 5,000 feet.
Let's go set climb minus 1,700 there.
Climb rate set to minus 1,700 feet per minute.
And that'll get us going down.
S. 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 Track flight distance 98 nm, out 22,680 feet. Microsoft Flight Simulator X.
Yeah, so we should be alright on the
Track flight
altitude.
21,593 nm.
Yeah, we should be fine to get down in time.
Target EHAM selected.
Right, that's gone direct to Amsterdam. Normal.
Runway. EHAM 04 selected.
Going for runway
Sir.
04 by the looks of it.
Switching to true heading display for the
Wasn't the
approach.
assigned runway by
Sir.
SimBrief, but that'll do. That's what it said us to. We're going down at a good descent rate now, nearly minus 1800 feet per minute. And let me just check for my own reference. TR1 is 74 nautical miles, so we're fine.
Track flight distance 73 nm.
Now 73 nautical miles out. I'm coming through flight level 160. How far away from TR1? We want to make sure we're slowed down in time. 60. Yeah, this is going to be pretty tight for speed because we're going to have a lot of speed and then we're going to have to slow down. I'll tell you what I might do just to make it a little bit easier is just go set speed 300.
Speed set to 300 knots.
You can hear those engines coming back. Just so that it makes it easier for us because we'll be already a little bit more slowed down by the time we get there.
S. Autopilot main panel dialog heading course HTG 087 0300 KNTV/S -1433 FT/MALT 14392 FTTR 149.587 Microsoft Flight Simulator. Autopilot main panel dialog heading course HTG 087 DBS 0300 KNTV/S minus 1395 FT/ML 12564 FTTR 141. Microsoft Flight Simulator X. Speed safe 341 Microsoft Flight Simulator X.
Just waiting for that speed safe to come back to 250.
S. F's panel dialog. Flight take up. Speed safe 341 Microsoft Flight Simulator X.
See, we're in a very tight space at the minute. We're going to have about 30 or 25 nautical miles to slow back really from about 300 knots to about 170, 180 or so for the approach.
System submenu space. Take up speed safe 250. Microsoft Flight
Speed
Simulator
set
X.
to 250 knots.
S. Autopilot main panel dialog heading course HDG 088 0252
So where are we? Literally at 250 knots, which is nice, 24.5. So I will allow it to just stabilise our speed, and then in a little bit I will take control.
S.
Right, I'm going to start making some preparations, so let me plug my joystick in. It's just going to do the old reload, which is absolutely fine. Now FSX Pilot is still controlling the speed. It's still doing exactly what I need it to do. It's now we're at 16.9. I'm just going to go into here, of course. That wasn't supposed to happen. And we want to do that. And then we want to go uncheck. And we don't want the throttles that much, so let's bring them back.
253 knots.
And I have control. So let's just make sure that our speed is stable.
253 knots.
Yeah, relatively so. We can bring her back a little bit more, but we are doing okay. And I'm going to start bringing it right back now, ready for this approach.
250 knots.
And I'm going to go first notch of flaps just to help us out with that a little bit as well.
236 knots.
That is starting to come back. I want us to be about 175 knots, something like this, for the approach. You can hear the wind sound fading away.
218 knots.
We are slowly coming back. We're in no rush, so I'll add a little bit of power.
206 knots.
As we just begin to come through 200 knots.
$201 knots.
We're looking okay. Let's just check our distance. 9.8, so we're looking good.
198 knots.
Yeah, we've got room. We're doing absolutely fine. We've only got our first notch of flaps out as well, so there'll be more of that needs to come out.
194 knots.
We'll just leave the throttles there pretty much and just allow it to continue coming back. Easy.
189 knots.
It's nicely coming back. Yeah, we can make that just with the current power setting.
184 knots. 180 knots.
Right, perfect. 180 knots right there. So let's apply a little bit of power. We don't want to overdo it.
177 knots.
It's about exactly where we want to be pretty much. So let's see if we're holding the speed or if we need to adjust it a bit.
177 knots.
Yeah, we're pretty much able to hold that speed currently. So how are we doing with distance?
178 knots.
5.3. We're going to go with our next notch of flaps just to help us get a bit more configured here.
177 knots.
Which is just perfect. We may need to apply a bit more power due to the flaps.
176 knots.
Only a tiny bit. So we've got some flap out, which is always good. We'll go full flap on landing, but
177 knots. 180 knots.
Gained a little bit of speed.
$182 knots. 182 knots.
'Just help that speed out a little bit.
179 knots.
It's a bit better.
$177 knots.
Looking good right there. So how are we doing on distance?
Autopilot main panel dialog heading course HDG 086 ideas 0172 KNTV/S 023FT/MO 03367 FTTR 26.586.
169 knots.
So we need a bit more power, I think, because we're leveling out. May as well go full flap now, seeing as we're coming in on the approach.
166 knots.
Going to get the gear warning, so we'll also go gear down.
157 knots.
My joystick's having fun with that, as it will do. So let me just
146 knots.
do a quick reload of the joystick. It does that. It just has a bit of a vibrating fit when you put the gear down, but it's
148 knots.
So we're looking good on the speed. A little bit slow, but that's just because of where we are in terms of our config. We want to be a little bit slower.
151 knots.
So we don't need to gain loads of speed back, but we are relatively stable.
152 knots.
Right, that'll do us nicely.
$152 knots.
So as for our approach speed, we're going to be aiming for about 130 knots or just a tad lower than that for our
152
final
knots.
approach speed. As you can see, we're maintaining 152 knots or something, which is just fine for now.
152 knots.
Of course, we will begin our final descent in a bit, and FSX Pilot should tell us when that is.
151 knots.
Let's have a look where we are, shall we?
Autopilot main panel dialog heading course HDG 085 DES
151 knots.
FT/MO 03310 FTTR2
Yeah, we're coming right up to TR2, so any second now we're going to want
Gear
to
down.
bring that speed back right there.
Landing lights on.
So we're beginning our descent.
150 knots.
So let's bring those throttles right back and slow ourselves down to our final approach speed.
148 knots.
Which is of course going to be about 130, so we want to bring that right back there. Slow us down because we're going to need to.
141 knots.
Coming to 140 nicely there.
$135 knots.
135, not bad. We've lost the speed nicely. A little bit more, just a few more knots, and we'll pretty much be there.
131 knots.
131, pretty much where we want to be, yeah.
$128 knots.
128, yeah, that's good. Just want to maintain that speed a little bit.
132 knots.
Will do, good, yeah. Don't want to gain it again.
$132 knots.
Yeah, looking okay.
$127 knots.
Looking good.
$127 knots.
Maintaining that apparently, which is just about acceptable.
127 knots.
Yeah, that'll do me. Just fine.
127 knots.
Plane's descending just nicely on this power setting as well. To Amsterdam.
128
It's felt a very
knots.
short flight, which is always good.
$130 knots. $130 knots. $128 knots.
S
127 knots.
Okay, good, we're maintaining
1,000
that.
feet,
Coming up
sir.
to 1,000 feet. Just fine.
129 knots. $128 knots.
Looking very good. Coming in for runway 04, of course.
126 knots.
A little bit slow, only by a tiny bit. Just don't want to get too slow, but we'll be just fine.
127 knots. 500.
500 feet is checked.
127 knots.
Right, easy.
$127 knots.
Still maintaining that.
$127 knots. $128 knots. 100.
100.
50. Brakes and reverse thrust.
Touchdown.
Sir.
I idled the throttle
121 knots.
a little bit late there, but hopefully it was just about acceptable.
22 knots.
Reverse thrust out. I'm expecting that was pretty forceful.
Heading set to a true heading of 41 degrees. 0 knots.
Right, we're now at 0 knots, so we can just go and go.
Current altitude is -4 feet.
Say nothing
Sir.
about that, because we don't need it to do that. And we're just gonna wait for the flaps to come in and everything like that. And then we're just gonna. The taxi Amsterdam is absolutely massive, so we are gonna just go and find a gate somewhere. Let's see where we can go somewhere. Yeah, they all seem... Tell you what, let's go to that one. That'll do us nicely. Medium gate, which is pretty much... I mean, we probably could have taken
Simulation
small, but that's
unpaused.
fine.
Time acceleration is 1.
And, perfect. Engine cut out. They can go. Because we've finished. That was a very short flight. Yeah, I think the landing rate might be a little bit forceful. Let me disconnect the joystick. So let's go and have a look, shall we, on Project Flight. So obviously we've arrived. Landing rate -484. Yeah, a little bit firm, but I'll take that. It's FSX pilot, so what do you expect? It's acceptable. So that's just fine. So we will complete the flight. Complete, easy. That's good. So this will load me my details, so we can see. The reg, see the block time rather was 52 minutes, very short of course. Block fuel was about 3.5 tons, 239, we only used 1.3 tons apparently. Landing rate was of course that. Apparently we took 114 people. That was the departure time in Zulu. So that's absolutely fine. And that's pretty much it, we can exit that. And that's us done with Project Flight and pretty much the flight, so I hope you enjoyed that. Just a short little flight there, short, hour-long video. We may do the return on stream at some point. And the first time I've showed off the Embraer, which I do like the E-Jets. They're fun little planes to fly on short little flights. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video as always, and you can contact me in all the usual ways. See you later.